to you from Florida, northern Florida, where it's actually quite cold right now. I'm not minding it. I'm from Minnesota, but everybody else down here is complaining and has their jackets on, and they're letting their cars warm up when it's like 35 degrees. But anyway, it's kind of fun to see all that going on here. But I'm down here visiting my sister in Panama City Beach. But I did want to just tell you this briefly, just because of the day's event that happened today with the funeral of Jimmy Carter. Yesterday, my family, my wife, and our son, we spent a good chunk of the day in Plains, Georgia. And this right here is the boyhood home of Jimmy Carter. And so it was very interesting to be in Plains yesterday as they were getting ready for the funeral and the procession coming there today for the burial there at the homestead where he lived now, not this homestead where you see on the screen. But I bring that up because as many of you may or may not know, Mr. Carter and his wife were avid bird watchers. And so when I was coming into Plains yesterday, the sign Plains, Georgia was there on the right side of the road, and right above it there, flirting in the trees, was a male and a female cardinal. And I thought, oh, how fitting as I come into Plains, Georgia, that I'm seeing a pair of cardinals. And also, by the way, on the radio was playing Georgia on My Mind. And so I thought that was very fitting. Even more fitting was going out to the boyhood home and seeing where he spent a lot of his time. And on the left side of the house there, you can see the tall trees. Those are pecan trees. And those were planted there by his mother. And they extend quite a ways off to the left there. And so they harvested the pecans and sold them there in the town of Plains. Well, the reason I'm bringing it up to you today, to you bird watchers, is I hope you'll get a kick out of this, because I know I did, was as I approached the house, I saw a flock of birds on the ground. And I was like, oh my goodness, what is going on? There were over 40 to 50 warblers on the ground. And a good chunk of them were pine warblers, but there were other warblers mixed in. And then as I looked off to my right, there was another flock of like about 40 chipping sparrows down there as well. And what they were all doing was feeding amongst the pecans that had fallen to the ground that hadn't been picked, that were broken open. And they were feeding some on the nuts. The pine warblers were feeding on the nuts there, and also the bugs down there as well. And so that was kind of a fun thing to experience there, especially as we think about Jimmy Carter and his legacy. But I wanted to first also thank ZAA, Zoological Association of America. We received a grant from them to be able to help me kind of put this PowerPoint project together here for you tonight. And of course, thanks to all the photographers. I tried to list all of them in the lower right there. So if you're interested in who the photographers were, please look that up. But my interest in nature really began at a very young age, and maybe just after hatching. I was interested in all the natural world around me and have continued that my entire life. That led me then into college up in Vermilion College in Ely, Minnesota. And that is where I started my fascination with the golden eagle that has been so much on my mind all these years since. As Greg mentioned, I was a student at Vermilion College, and my professor, Bill Teft, who was the gentleman there, labeled there, Bill, he took our class down to Hawk Ridge. And while we were at Hawk Ridge, we were learning about the migration of the raptors and the other birds that are migrating by there. And while there, it was where I started seeing golden eagles migrating overhead. And I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but most of you, I'm sure, are aware that Hawk Ridge sits right along Lake Superior and right outside of the city of Duluth. And so as these birds, and we're going to talk raptors and specific eagles right now, as they're migrating out of these northern parts of Minnesota and Canada, they're being pushed south, and they want to go when the winds are pushing them. And generally when those winds are the north or northwest, that gets them pushed up right up against Lake Superior. So then they funnel down along Lake Superior here, and there's also a ridge of land there, the ridge itself, that provides orographic lift. And so it's a great spot to watch these migrating birds. And so, of course, I was seeing golden eagles migrating by there, and that's where I became fascinated with them. Well, after graduating from Vermilion College, I was still thinking about golden eagles while I was working for the game wildlife.
This guy's talking about himself. Very interesting. I'm afraid I'll disconnect my tape.
Okay.
And what I was able to do is I was working in
What?
Southeast Minnesota.
Somebody needs
Julie,
to mute, please.
somebody's got to mute. Julie's got to mute there. There we go. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate that.
you.
And so anyway, working in Southeast Minnesota, living in Western Wisconsin, as fall approached, I started thinking about golden eagles. And I thought, oh, I want to go back up to the ridge and see some migrating golden eagles migrating by there. Well, I thought, oh, that's a long drive up there. I've heard that there are a couple of places in Southeast Minnesota where bird watchers have been going literally for decades to look for golden eagles. One of those areas was near Money Creek in Houston County, and the other one was in the Whitewater State Park, Whitewater Management Area. So I thought, well, I'll go check those out. And sure enough, I went to those areas and I found some golden eagles that were wintering in those areas. But as I started looking around, I was like, well, why aren't there golden eagles in other locations? What is it about this unique little spot here near Whitewater or this spot near Money Creek that's where these golden eagles are coming from when there's a lot of habitat up and down the bluff country or the driftless area that looks a lot like this habitat where these golden eagles are? Why might there not be other golden eagles in other locations as well? Now, I mentioned a word that I hope all of you are familiar with, but that's the driftless area. The driftless area is the primary area of the driftless is that area that's the diagonal lines within the yellow there. And that is the area that when the last glacial period occurred, that area of Southeast Minnesota, get my mouse here, Western Wisconsin, Eastern Iowa, and a little bit of Northern Illinois here was missed by the last glacial period, hence no drift, glacial drift after the glaciers receded. And so I started looking up and down the driftless area, up the bluffs and the coulees of that part of Southeast Minnesota and Western Wisconsin. And sure enough, I started finding more and more golden eagles. So then I started to doubt myself. Nobody had ever reported that many before. And so I thought, oh, maybe I'm misidentifying them. So maybe I better go back to my bird book, look through my bird book, my old Peterson bird guide, make sure that I'm making the correct identifications. Yep, I sure was. I was making the correct identifications, at least I thought. But then when I turned in the back of my Peterson guide to the map section, here was this map. Well, first is the map. Here shows the two birds that do look similar. And I was like, yeah, they look similar, but I think I know enough differences. So let me turn to the map and see if they're around this area. Nope. There was the page. There was the map. And nowhere near Minnesota, Wisconsin were any kind of numbers being shown here by the Peterson guide. So then I started to doubt myself a little bit more about the numbers of birds that I was finding, because maybe there was only just a couple of individual birds down there and I was double counting them because maybe they're really fast. And so by the time that I'm in one valley and I drive along to another valley, those golden eagles whip over the top of those bluffs. And so I'm double counting the birds. So then I decided what I needed to do, and I started 21 years ago, I decided to start a survey, calling it the Wintering Golden Eagle Survey of the Blufflands. And so I decided to recruit some friends, people that I knew were bird watchers, that I knew kind of already knew a little bit about identification of these birds. We worked on training and together, and we decided that we would then go out and look for these birds because I knew there were golden eagles hanging out here. Oh, by the way, this map is the Iowa border is right here at the bottom of your screen. Right up here in the upper right corner would be where La Crosse is. Some of you may have been down to the Reno-Brownsville area to look for the big groups of tundra swans. That would be right here on this side over here. But over here in the bluff country, I knew there were golden eagles here, here, and here, and here, but I couldn't be in those locations all at the same time. So I designed routes to make it accommodating for people to be there, to be on the same day, looking and documenting for the presence of these golden eagles. As I mentioned, the friends got out there and we started looking, and we definitely found some birds. First year, we had about 40 some people. The first year of the survey, we counted over 21 golden eagles on that first year of the survey, any more than had ever been reported in Minnesota or Wisconsin before. And as you can see here from 2008, up there, the numbers went up there to a little over 140 golden eagles reported on survey day. Then you can see kind of a drop off there in 2017, 2018. So you're like, well, what happened there? Well, we had 2 years, unfortunately, when the survey occurred where it was very foggy and it was very hard to see hardly anything, let alone those very difficult to find golden eagles, because they can be very challenging to find. Even when you know exactly where they are, they can still be very challenging to find. But you can see here after the low there of 2017, 2018, that got fair weather again. Numbers went back up to that 140 again, went down a little bit there. Then in 2023, we had 83 golden eagles. And then last year's survey, which was the 20th anniversary of the Golden Eagle survey, we had 150 golden eagles sighted in southeast Minnesota, western Wisconsin, eastern Iowa, a little bit of northern Illinois. And this year, we also had a count in Arkansas and Kentucky. And we'll talk about why we're expanding to those areas in just a little bit. We also are out there looking for other raptors. And of course, we're looking at bald eagles because we want to, one, make sure that we're not looking at a juvenile bald eagle or a golden eagle, because they do look very similar, especially when those young bald eagles are in their first year of their life. But we typically average well over 1,000 bald eagles on our survey every single year, which, once again, I know I'm preaching to the bird group, but many of you know that there was a time when we had less than 417 nesting pairs of bald eagles left in the entire lower 48 states. In fact, in 1963, there was only 417 nesting pairs of bald eagles left in the lower 48 states. And even more locally to Wabasha, Minnesota, from there down the river, 261 miles to Rock Island, Illinois, there was only one nesting pair of bald eagles left. So to have well over 1,000 bald eagles on a survey day is quite an amazing success for a conservation story for a species. Here you can see kind of the years from about 2017 on here, the numbers of bald eagles seen on the Golden Eagle survey. You can see the blue is the adults, and then the juveniles are the red color there on the top, excuse me. And then into 2023, we had 1,737 in 2023. But in 2024, any guesses in your minds? Yell it out. Was it higher or lower? It was higher. It was 2,607, which is just absolutely an amazing thing to think about, especially for those who've been around for a while and have watched that population increase so well. Now, I will say there are still many issues out there today, and we still need to be concerned about them. You know, Rosalie Edge once said, she was the one of the founders of the Hawk Mountain Sanctuary. You know, the time to be concerned about a species is when it's most common. That's when you need to be concerned and worried about it and watching it and conserving it. And so even though the eagles numbers are doing really well, you know, we still have issues with lead poisoning. Avian flu is definitely taking a toll on eagles as well, and being hit by cars and power lines. And so there are things out there, but it is definitely something to definitely celebrate the success, but also be cognizant and be aware, just as I know you as a member of the St. Paul Bird Alliance are there because of your care and concern for the environment. We also observe other raptors as well. We typically average about 12 different types of raptors on the survey, and typically average well over 600 red-tailed hawks every year on the survey as well. Now, the golden eagles here in Minnesota are in the southeast corner primarily, and we're going to talk a little bit of how we are learning that's expanding here in just a little bit. But when I first started bird watching, and maybe when many of you started bird watching, we knew there was these erratic, maybe wandering birds that end up in Minnesota near Whitewater or near Beaver, Houston, Money Creek. But we thought the population was primarily more than likely coming from somewhere out west, got off course, ended up here in Minnesota, ended up in the Driftless area, somewhat mountainous-like. That's where they spent the winter, and then went back out west again, because the golden eagles are more common in the western United States. So if you were to look at a map of the United States, take a line right down the middle of the Dakotas where the Missouri River goes, everything west of there, you can find golden eagles, all the way across the prairies into the foothills, and then into the mountainous areas. You are also finding golden eagles. They're also found into Canada, and all the way up into Alaska, you can find golden eagles as well. But they are also found down into California, unfortunately, through those fires that are going through right now, all the way down into southern west United States, and also down into the northern half of Mexico. You can find the golden eagle. Here is a golden eagle perched on a cacti here on the Mexican coat of arms. So golden eagles, when they're in Minnesota, though, they're not near the water, and they're not here in a scene like this. They are only in Minnesota during the winter. They typically arrive in mid to late October, and they're there in our area until late February and early March when they migrate back out. And we're going to find out where they're going in just a little bit. But they are not near aquatic environments. So remember those big brown eagles that you see along our lakes and our rivers, those are juvenile bald eagles. We really get a lot of calls at the National Eagle Center, generally in mid to late July into August, that people are seeing these golden eagles out near their lake. Well, golden eagles are not fish eaters. In fact, in the 25 plus years now that I've been watching and studying golden eagles, only on one occasion have I seen a golden eagle within a block or two of the Mississippi River or aquatic environments. They're in the forested bluff country, which I'll share with you in just a little bit. This is that habitat where they're hanging out. They're in the bluffs and the coulees, these forested bluff areas. That is where they are hanging out in habitat like this. And when they're in those habitats, they're not perching out in the open like this rough-legged hawk here. Well, I should have quizzed you to ask if you knew what that was. A rough-legged hawk perched up at the very tip of the top of that tree out in the middle of the field. Red-tailed hawk, rough-legged hawk, yeah, they'll perch out in the open like that. Even a bald eagle will. But the golden eagles, nope, they're perching within the bluff itself, in the trees. Now, when you go in the western United States, you will see golden eagles perching out in the open, out on power line poles and things like that on the open country. But the golden eagle population we have in Minnesota, Wisconsin, they're forest perchers, not out in the open. And when they're perching, you see where the money line is there across the top of the bluff line. That's typically where they perch when they are perching here in this area. Now, there's a couple advantages to perching right there that we found over the years. One is you're below the tree line and below the skyline, excuse me. So your shape is not seen, and so you're more likely to be missed by your prey items. And then the other thing that's interesting is you may have mentioned earlier that I talked about a term called orographic lift. Now, you may be familiar with thermal lift. We see a raptor circling in the sky. They're riding on thermals, which are rising currents of warm air due to the uneven heating of the Earth's surface. And so as those warm bubbles rise up, the hawk, the eagle, circles up on that. And birds like hawks are taking advantage of that. But this other type of lift is where the wind hits an object and then it creates an updraft. That updraft then is called orographic lift. And so usually right along the top of the bluff line there, if you come into southeast Minnesota, you'll see vultures and eagles and hawks riding right above that bluff, taking advantage of that orographic lift. Well, why did the golden eagles perch right there in the money line there? Well, besides avoiding being seen, that's also the best place to enter into that orographic lift without too much turbulence. You go below that, you're gonna have to work to get into it. You work above it, there's gonna be a little turbulence right there. So that's kind of that fine line of that entering into the highway of air. Now, the other area that the golden eagles regularly take advantage of for finding prey is a term called a goat prairie. It's also called a bluff prairie or a dry prairie. These are prairies that are on the south and west facing sides of the bluffs. They are areas that get a lot of sunlight, so there's rapid transpiration rate there, which means that trees don't really grow well there, but prairie grasses with their long, deep roots can survive in that type of an environment very well. Well, one of the things that I want to point out that these goat prairies, this is a nice looking goat prairie, but most of the goat prairies that we have in Minnesota and Wisconsin have been choked out by these little dark clumps that you see throughout here. Every once in a while, you'll see these clumps here. Those are red cedar trees. Now, red cedar trees were historically here when the settlers first arrived and the original land surveys were done. But where they were was near rocky outcroppings on the bluff, where fire regularly didn't get to. And so they were surviving in those rocky outcroppings. But once we stopped fire in the landscape, then those seeds were dropping down in the open prairie areas. And with a lack of fire, the cedar really took off, and it's been choking out those goat prairies. In fact, the goat prairie habitat is one of our most threatened ecosystems in both the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin, with many unique prairie wildflowers and grasses, butterflies, skippers, skinks, timber rattlesnakes also utilize that habitat. Excuse me. Well, why do golden eagles like those habitats? Well, you can imagine if there was a prey item, which we'll talk about what that is in a minute, standing right out here in the middle of this goat prairie, that golden eagle could come along the backside of the bluff, come up and over, and go right down and catch that prey out in the open. But with the goat prairies being choked out by the red cedar, that makes it more area for the prey to be able to run into and harder for the golden eagles to take advantage of it. So one of the things that I'm very proud of over the years that I've been doing this golden eagle research is more and more goat prairies are being restored. And it definitely helps the golden eagles, but it also helps all those other critically threatened and endangered species in the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin as well. Now, the reason you may be wondering, well, why do they call it a goat prairie? Well, when the settlers first arrived here, they would have their livestock grazing definitely down in the fields here, but the livestock would climb onto the hillsides as well. And the goats were the only ones to get to these very steep hillsides, hence the term goat prairie. Well, the numbers of golden eagles that I was finding, excuse me, was gathering the attention of several different individuals, one of them being Mark Martell here on the right, formerly Audubon, Minnesota, and the Raptor Center at the University of Minnesota. Many of you may know of his work many years ago with ospreys and tracking ospreys from the Minneapolis area, Twin Cities areas, down into the South America. But also, the other person that was attracted to this was the father of non-game wildlife here in the state of Minnesota, and that was Carol Henderson. Carol Henderson and Mark were talking one day about all these golden eagles that this guy down in southeast Minnesota was seeing. And I'm sure they were like, who is this guy and what does he really know? And so they gave me a call one day and said, hey, we'd like to come on down and see some of these golden eagles that you're seeing. And so I said, sure, come on down. And so Mark Martell came along and then also Bud Tordoff. Many of you probably know Bud Tordoff from the Peregrine Falcon recovery work and the University of Minnesota. Also, Lori Nauman and Rich Baker came down as well. And the goal was I was going to take them out and show them golden eagles. And you know what? We spent a couple hours in the car and we didn't see a golden eagle. And it was like, oh no, here are all these top people from the non-game program and wildlife. And I'm out there blowing myself right here, not showing them what I need to do. And thankfully, we did eventually see some golden eagles. And it was like an amazing turning on all of these minds, these great natural history minds, like, oh, wow, this is amazing. We never knew this was going on. We need to learn more about it. And so we decided to form a partnership to study this population a little bit more. And so we decided to learn more about them by finding out, first and foremost, where are these birds actually coming from? We know they come here during the winter. They then leave. Are they going out west like everybody thought? That's what everybody was learning. That's what everybody was learning from the University of Minnesota. That's what they were teaching. That's what MOU members thought. That's what we all thought, and that we're coming out from out west. And so we wanted to help prove that. So we formed this partnership. In order to do that, one of the things we were going to do is Carol Henderson was able to get us some money to get some satellite transmitters, to put some transmitters on these birds so we could track these birds to truly find out where these birds are coming from. That little transmitter, as you see there, whoops, let me go back, was put on the back of the bird. It's worn like a backpack. You can see a little bit of ribbon there coming through. That goes around to the front of the bird's body. It is then tied on, and it's worn like a little backpack. You can see here on the back of here, there's a little solar panel, and so it would keep on recharging a battery. So historically, you'd have the old transmitters that would last about a year, and you had to follow them in a truck, right, to follow them where the birds were going and get little pings off of your antenna. Well, these little transmitters send a little thing up to space. You as a scientist, researcher can just literally sit at home and watch your computer to find out where these birds are going. Well, in order to get those birds, we had to capture some of those birds. And so when we talked to some of the folks, they said, okay, probably the best way is to put out some deer carcasses for them. They're fairly easy to get from the sides of the roads, get permission from the DOT, pick them up. And here we are sawing them up. By the way, I do not recommend using a saw like this on a frozen deer carcass unless you're looking for a really good workout to cut a frozen deer apart. We cut them up into nice little tempting pieces. We then put them in buckets. This is actually my son who is with on this trip down here in Florida right now. He is actually now a junior at Stevens Point, Wisconsin in wildlife management. So some people look at this and think, oh, you're using pretty cheap labor there with using kids. Maybe, but look at what it's done. He's now in the wildlife career field as well. So definitely was gratifying to have that help. So we put those carcasses out there. We put trail cameras on them to see if we could get birds coming in. And sure enough, we had lots and lots of bald eagles coming into the carcasses. We had crows, a murder happening right there in front of us there. And we had red-tailed hawks. We had rough-legged hawks. And we had a few golden eagles, but rarely did we have golden eagles coming into our carcasses. So they were like, okay, what else then is on the menu for these golden eagles? If they're not eating frozen deer carcasses, what are they eating while they're here? Well, what I primarily see them feeding on over the years, first and foremost, number one prey item is fox squirrels. Fox squirrels is the number one prey item that they're feeding on. They're also often out feeding along the edges of the fields here in southeast Minnesota, out in the open areas. Very accessible for a golden eagle to fly out and catch them, maybe before they catch a tree. Another interesting thing is that I learned from Mr. Carol Henderson is the fox squirrels regularly eat cocklebur seeds. And they're one of the only mammals that can feed on those normally noxious or toxic seeds, but the gray squirrels can eat those. And so you can imagine a fox squirrel out in the farm country, feeding on a cocklebur head, and then all of a sudden a golden eagle coming along, and it's got to scramble to get to a tree or a telephone pole, and it might not make it by the time that speedy golden eagle arrives. They do feed on gray squirrels as well, and then also eastern cottontails. So we got permission from the state DNR in both Minnesota and Wisconsin, because we were trapping in both states, to put out those animals in a controlled way to lure in golden eagles. And we did. We lured in birds. We definitely caught birds in our traps that we put out there. We caught red-tailed hawks, not golden eagles. Red-tailed hawks also like those things as well. And so we caught lots of red-tailed hawks. Now, I point this picture out. I love this picture. Many of you may know that, a raptor's stomach is fairly small. The red-tailed hawk's stomach is, a little bit smaller than a golf ball. And so it doesn't have room for a lot of food in its stomach, but it does have a widening esophagus called the crop. And you can see here, when that crop is full, it creates a bulge there in that upper chest. And this red-tailed hawk, it's a young red-tail, is just eating a massive meal, right? Yet, as soon as he saw our live prey, he was ready to go for something else. And so that was really pretty cool to see that, yes, he was full, but if you can catch something again, you definitely keep trying. And so we decided that when we were having to go out and pull these red-tailed hawks out of our trap, we were basically blowing our cover to the local golden eagles in the area that we were trying to lure in. So we said, okay, what else then is on the dinner plate then for those golden eagles? Well, one of the things that I regularly saw them feeding on over the years, and still do, is a bird. Now, I'm hoping that many of you may know what this bird is. It's a bird that you probably think about at least once a year. It is the, turkey, the wild turkey. Golden eagles regularly go after wild turkeys, which is pretty amazing when you think about that. That turkey may weigh more than that golden eagle does, but yet they're able to kill them and take advantage of them. Now, when they take advantage of that turkey, once again, they can only fill about 2 pounds worth of stuff in their crop and still be able to take flight. So that golden eagle will feed on about 2 pounds of that turkey, then take flight and go up in the tree and let that digest, and then hopefully come back the next day and there's still some of that turkey left, but usually a coyote or fox or bald eagles have come in and cleaned up the rest of that turkey. So we looked to the DNR and said, okay, could we use wild turkeys? Well, there was a stipulation there that we could not use them, but luckily I did some research and found out that there were some turkeys called black Spanish. domesticated turkey form that look a lot like wild turkey. And here is one being held by this young lady who was a local high school FFA student who raised these black Spanish turkeys over the summer for us. So they were ready for the winter for us to be able to lure in golden eagles so that we could put a transmitter on them. But the first golden eagle that we put a transmitter on, unfortunately, did not get caught in our traps. It caught in a trap that was not meant to be in, and that was this bird right here. This bird came in to the National Eagle Center as an injured eagle. And when the DNR, and I know the guys who brought it in, they said, we've got an injured bald eagle for you, a juvenile bald eagle. So everybody makes mistakes. Remember that. Even people who work in the field still have trouble identifying the difference between bald eagles and golden eagles. So hopefully by the end of this, though, you will feel much more competent by your identifications. But unfortunately, this golden eagle had put his leg down into a trap that a coyote trapper had put out. And this golden eagle, for some reason, put his foot down into that hole, and unfortunately got caught in that trap, and so had 2 gaping wounds on each side of its leg. We then immediately took it to the Raptor Center, world renowned, as you all know, for treating raptors. They did amazing work doing some skin grafts on this bird, some feather follicle grafts, and after several months, this bird was able to be released as our first bird with a satellite transmitter. The next bird was this bird here that Mark is holding, and that is a bird that was flying over a highway in Wisconsin and got caught in the draft of a semi and got slammed into the pavement. Now, these 2 gentlemen on either side of Mark were going turkey hunting, and they saw this happen. And so they pulled over, got the golden eagle off into the side of the woods from the roadway, and they called the local DNR. And the DNR said that, well, I'm about 2 hours away. You guys can just go on and I'll find the bird. But nope, these 2 young men waited for the 2 hours for the conservation officer to come to retrieve the bird. And then it was brought to us and then eventually to the Raptor Center as well. This bird had a full crop. Remember, we talked about that bulge, okay? That is very good that this bird had this full crop, because when it got slammed to the pavement, that full crop helped cushion the blow, so it didn't break any internal bones. So it just needed that esophagus to kind of calm down, had some abrasion there, calm that down, and that bird was able to be released then with one of our transmitters. And then this bird is a bird that was flying by Hawk Ridge. I mentioned earlier, I spent a lot of time at Hawk Ridge with Frank Nicoletti, hanging out, watching him during his early days in the early 90s, watching those birds migrate over. So I've been a friend with Frank all these years, and mentioned to Frank that if you catch a golden eagle, we've got a transmitter. Mark will bring it up and we'll put a transmitter on that bird. And so we did. And this was a bird that we called Jack. The last bird I should mention was called Jeanette. And this bird was Whitey. Anyway, back to the National Eagle Center. The original project started out releasing 5 different birds as their partnership. Eventually, for Camp Ripley up in north of the Twin Cities there, they also released a couple of birds as the Golden Eagle Research Project as well. But I will share the stuff here that we did first right here. So we released the birds. There goes that first bird. That's Whitey, the bird that was in the trap. That bird was then released. And then the big question was, okay, where are these birds going? Are they heading out west like everybody thought? Our transmitters definitely showed maybe a little west, but primarily north. And so here you can see us down here in Minnesota, and you can see the tracking lines of a couple of different birds here going all the way here into these northern reaches of Canada. Very top of your screen, way up there, that would be the Arctic Circle. So just below that, here's the Northwest Territories here. Here is Nunavut. Over here would be Churchill, Manitoba. So when you think about Manitoba and the polar bears, that's over here. So that's where those birds were going. Through our project, we've also had birds go over here as well, in the eastern part of Northeast Canada here as well, up near the Labrador Sea there as well, in Quebec, northern Quebec. So that's where all the birds have been summering that then wintered in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Here is an example of one of the birds that we released from over by Wapaka, Wisconsin. This was a bird that was coming into a deer carcass, and a landowner called us to ask us identification of the bird, and we said, that's a golden eagle. And we said, if that bird keeps coming into that trail camera, please let us know if you wouldn't mind. We'd like to put a transfer on it. So we They called us a couple of days later. The bird was still coming. Reached out to a good friend, Gene Jacobs, out of Stevens Point, and he was able to capture the bird for us, and we put a transfer on that bird. Now, that bird left Wapaka here, way down here near Stevens Point, flew 2,326 miles all the way here to this spot in Nunavut. We tracked her to that location here, hold on here, in Nunavut for 4 years. Okay, we tracked to the same nesting location. That's interesting. Well, hold on to your seat. Wait till you hear this. For 3 of the years, she arrived that distance from Wapaka to Nunavut, 2,326 miles, back to Nunavut on exactly April 3rd, 3 years in a row. The exact same day, 3 years in a row. The last year we tracked her there, it was a couple of days later. But that's still amazing reliability. I mean, the airlines, they could learn something from that, right? Well, here is another migration story. We talked about Jack going by Hawk Ridge. That is the bird that Frank Nicoletti and the folks up at Ridge Bird Observatory caught in their net up there. That bird then left Duluth, flew down through Wisconsin, ended up near Dubuque, Iowa. I was like, yep, that's the Driftless area. That makes sense. That's where that bird is going to winter. Jack spent about a week there, must have been fueling up, because then he continued the rest of his journey down here to southern Missouri, northern Arkansas. And he was tracked to that same location for 3 different winters into that area. And then he nested right up, spent the summers up here, right above the Great Slave Lake. So pretty fascinating information. One of the things that I wanted to do, and Mark wanted to do as well, was to capture both a male and a female down here in Minnesota or Wisconsin to see if these birds might migrate together. Typically, we don't think of raptors migrating together. We know bald eagles don't do that. We know they have a nest site fidelity, coming back to the same nest site year after year, but they don't winter together necessarily. They don't migrate together. That's been observed. But I do see the golden eagles in southeast Minnesota, western Wisconsin, throughout the winter, hanging together as a pair, both a male and a female hanging together, perching together throughout the day. In fact, I've been watching pairs in western Wisconsin now, for well over 20 years. And these pairs use the same trees year after year. Now, I can't guarantee it's the exact same birds year after year, but a pair does use the same regular branch in the same tree year after year for well over 20 years. It's pretty amazing perch site fidelity, what we call perch site fidelity. Well, back to that bird that we thought we could capture both a male and a female. We never did that, but thankfully some friends of ours down in Kentucky near the Bernheim Forest Reserve, which is south there in Kentucky, they happen to have a female that they caught coming in there. They put a transmitter on that bird, and there was a male coming in. And so they were able to capture that bird and put a transmitter on as well. And what they found was just absolutely fascinating. Here's burn time here at the bottom of your screen, right down here. And you can see here, Churchill, Manitoba, and just to the west of the Churchill area there is a national park. And that is where these golden eagles were nesting, okay? So they nested up here, but then they wintered down here. But they did not take the same paths to get to those locations. You can see one of the birds came through Minnesota, would typically go right by Hawk Ridge, continue on up to near Churchill that way. The other bird would generally go on the other side here, the Great Lakes, up here through Sault Ste. Marie and across here, and then come up there. So these golden eagles have been documented to be wintering together and nesting together in the North Country, but taking 2 different migratory paths to get there. So pretty cool information that we're learning. I mentioned some friends down at Bernheim. We're part of a group of folks here called the Eastern Golden Eagle Working Group. This is one we met in Michigan at Sault Ste. Marie several years ago. A couple of years ago, we met down at the Bernheim Institution down there. And our next trip we're very excited about, we are going to go to Churchill. And so we are hoping to do that here next year. We're working on fundraising. So if anybody knows a little extra change in their pocket and they want to help the Golden Eagle Working Group here, researchers, get up to Churchill, Manitoba to learn more about that habitat up there. we're looking for a little spare change here and there. But anyway, I bring that up because we're working as a group for many years now to create a conservation plan, because most of the states had no idea there were golden eagles wintering in these states. And as you can see here, these are all lines of birds that have had satellite transmitters put on them and tracking that has been done here. Yes, we've had birds over here in Minnesota, Wisconsin, but lots of the eastern states have been doing a lot of work out there, especially a lot of the ridge lines out there where there were trying to put in wind farms. A lot of research was done to determine how detrimental that may be on migratory pathways for some of these birds. And so there was lots of transmitters deployed, put out there, and you can see all the tracking lines. And so, as I mentioned, most all these states had no idea. Remember that map I showed you from the Peterson Guide? Had no idea there were golden eagles there, which meant there was no management plans. Nobody knew anything about them. And so we decided as this Golden Eagle working group that we were going to write a conservation plan for the eastern golden eagles. And so we did that over the last 5-6 years. I think it's been about a year ago now that we put that out. You can go to the Eastern Golden Eagle Working Group and see the big document about it. This is a very interesting, it's the first conservation plan that we are aware of at this date that includes the cultural aspect of eagles. As many of you know, eagles are very important to our Native American friends. And so they were a part of our conservation plan. Tribe from Michigan has been doing research as well. And so we have cultural information in there about why we need to protect this species, besides the habitat and all of those things, requirements as well. So if you'd like to look at that, feel free to do that. So there's that map that I talked about. And so because of the work that the National Eagle Center and Mark Martell and thankfully Carol Henderson allowed us to do this work, we are now changing that map to here. This is the information that we're learning now today when you look at the maps. And so it's continuing learning, and it's because of people that are part of our citizen science survey that we do every year, the Golden Eagle Project. And I'll talk a little bit more about the end on how you could become involved with the survey, which is coming up here on January 18th. But I would like to say that I think the golden eagles have been here all along. As I was doing research for this, Carol Henderson was doing research on this. You know, there are birds at the Bell Museum from the late 1800s, golden eagles. Journals of a gentleman named Vaslev, Johann Vaslev from Lanesboro in the late 1800s. He was regularly keeping naturalist type notes, and he was observing golden eagles near Lanesboro during the right months. And so we know that he was identifying them correctly based on his documentation and also the time of the year that he was seeing them. And so I think these birds have always been here, just like that heron is there in the background. It's always been there, but I think we were looking the other way. We weren't looking in the exact right spots. Because a lot of the records originally by, for example, the Minnesota Ornithologists Union, just because we didn't know this information at the time, a lot of the records may have been discounted because they were away from the reliable locations of Houston, Money Creek, and then birds that were seen near the river should have been discounted. And then it just kind of led into a whole snowball effect. But hopefully I can share a few tips with you to help make you feel a little bit more comfortable tonight about how to learn the difference between those juvenile bald eagles and the golden eagles. Now, it may seem a little prickly there at first to identify the two different species, but I think if I give you a couple of steps here to make an identification, I think you'll be able to do that. Just hang on, folks. We're going to get through a little bit of stuff here, but I think by the end of it, you'll be able to identify the difference between those two species. But I will say that, remember, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Now, first thing I will say is that some of you may have heard this when you first started bird watching. You know, I've heard that golden eagles are so much larger than bald eagles. Is that true? Well, actually not. Textbook, yes, female golden eagles are 10% larger than bald eagles, coming from the same geographic region. But what we have to realize, if you remember Bergman's rule, the further north you are, the further away from the equator you are, the more body mass that you're going to have. And so the golden eagles that we do have coming into Minnesota, remember, are coming from those northern reaches of Canada, Nunavut, for example, they are much larger. For example, the average female bald eagle around here is in the 10 to 12 pounds. Males in eagles are smaller, so the average male around here is 8 to 10 pounds. A couple of the female golden eagles that we've released with transmitters have been over 16 pounds. In fact, one of the golden eagles was over 17 pounds. In fact, she was so large that Mark did not have a band big enough to put on her leg, because besides the transmitter we would put on the bird's back, we'd also put a leg band on there as well, because that transmitter is designed to eventually fall off. If that bird is ever found again, we want to be able to see that leg band. And we did not have one big enough for that over 17-pound bird. So if you've ever been to the National Eagle Center, you've seen Angel. She weighs in at about 11 pounds. So think about that much larger for that golden eagle. But back to my point here. A lot of times people would see a picture like this and they would see the bird on the left and like, yeah, I recognize that's a bald eagle. That bird on the right, it's all dark brown and it's bigger. That must be a golden eagle. But in fact, what they were seeing was a juvenile bald eagle. In fact, the bird on the left was probably a male adult bald eagle, and the bigger bird on the right was a female juvenile. And so those females being larger, plus we also have to remember that young eagles have longer primaries, secondaries, and tail feathers their first couple of years of their life. Those longer feathers, primaries and secondaries, oops, let me show you a picture here, like this, you can see there, those are like training feathers. They're longer feathers, so they make the bird more able to catch lift more effectively and also account for some damage that might occur to the feathers. Let me go back here. So remember, in eagles, the females are larger than the males. And so you can clearly see a very large female on the right, while that poor little male on the left is waiting for his turn there at that carcass. Anyway, back to those longer flight feathers. And so here you can see this bird has some of those retained longer feathers. These feathers here have molted in the newer feathers, and they're shorter. But those first year feathers, originally all of these feathers along the wing would have been longer. So that does make that bird appear bigger. And that's another reason why people thought they were so much larger. And they were just juvenile golden eagles. Another one with those longer retained feathers there. All right, let's put a name to the golden eagle. Bald eagles and golden eagles both found here in North America. Bald eagle only found in North America, but the golden eagle is also found across the Northern Hemisphere. Northern Africa, Europe, and Asia, you can also find the golden eagle. Now, in the world, there are close to 60 different species of eagles. And at the Eagle Center, this is one of our exhibits where you can learn about some of the other eagle species from around the world. You can see on the right here side, they do fall into 4 primary groupings of eagles. The bald eagle falls into what's called the sea or fish eagle family. Here is the stellar sea eagle, also a member of the sea or fish eagle family. Here is the booted eagle family, which the golden eagle belongs to. This is the wedge-tailed eagle from Australia. Here is the serpent eagle family, and this is the Bataleur eagle from Africa. And here is what is called the serpent eagle family. You can probably guess what they feed a lot on. And this is the long-crested eagle from Africa. Here on the left is the harpy eagle that many of you probably are thinking about in the Central America and South America jungle. And then on the right is one of our most rarest eagles, and that is the Philippine eagle. And they're a member of the forest eagle family. But the bald eagle is the one that we're definitely most recognized for here, especially in North America. And probably most people can pick that one out as an adult. But as you can see here, those juveniles in those first couple of years of life look very different. So here is a juvenile bald eagle on the left, and on the right there is an adult golden eagle. And you can see they do look somewhat similar at very first glance. Here is a young bald eagle in that first year of life. And now there's a lot of variation, but here is another bird that's about 2 years of age. Here you can see those longer retained there. Here we're getting a little bit older, more and more white feathers start coming in on that head, typically at 3 years of age. Typically by that 5th to 6th year of life is when they obtain the complete white head and tail. But it's in that first year of life when they look a lot like a golden eagle. That's when they're all dark brown, typically having a very dark beak and a dark eye. Now here is a golden eagle. Now notice it also has a dark eye, but notice its beak is dark at the tip. but then kind of a bluish gray, and then yellow. If we go back to that bald eagle, it's all dark throughout that entire beak in that first year of their life. Here is a juvenile bald eagle. It's all dark, all dark. Here, then, I'm hoping you know by now, this is a golden eagle because it's dark at the tip, then bluish gray, and then yellow. Here, all dark, that is the juvenile bald eagle. Now, the juvenile bald eagles have a big old beak. I'm guessing that some of you in this audience may know who this is. I'm hearing some of you, I hope, say Jimmy Durante. What was Jimmy Durante known for? Yeah, he was a nice guy. He was a good singer, good piano player, dancer, you name it. But he was also known for that big old schnoz. And so the bald eagles are the Jimmy Durantes of the world. They have those big schnozzes. Gold eagles, on the other hand, have a much smaller schnoz. Now remember, the bald eagles are feeding a lot on fish because fish have scales, rough skin. You need a big tool. A beak is a tool to rip and tear that apart. Gold eagles, on the other hand, not feeding on fish, feeding on mammals and birds, they have a much smaller tool, and so a smaller schnoz, much more like the smaller schnoz of Michael Jackson, had a much smaller schnoz. So hopefully you'll remember that. Now, golden eagles get their name from the golden colored nape, the golden colored nape on the back of their head. Here you can see that golden nape can vary quite a bit. Hence, this one is very light. That's why we call this bird whitey, the golden eagle. Here is a juvenile bald eagle. It does have golden brown feathers, but it's not on the nape. It's on the back of the bird. Sometimes it's on the wings. It can be in a variety of places, but it'll never be just on the nape the way it is on a golden eagle. Here, golden brown feathers, yes, but nope, this is a juvenile bald eagle. Here, yes, it has some golden on the top of its head, but it's not on the nape. This then is a juvenile bald eagle. Here, big schnoz, all dark, no golden nape. Yes, it has brown here, gold brown here, but not on the nape. Once again, I think I'm hearing you all say juvenile bald eagle. Here is a variety of images of golden eagles, variations of that golden coloration on the nape and the beak color, but always tricolored on the golden eagle. Bald eagles, being in the fish eagle family, because they feed on fish a lot, they have no feathers in the lower part of the leg. That reduces drag, okay? You can imagine if they had feathers on there, that would create drag in the water. Also having feathers in the lower legs, catching fish in the wintertime, might ice up. So by having lower legs, that's the bald eagle. So remember, bald eagles don't have bald heads. Remember, they're called bald eagles because in Old English, B-A-L-D-E meant white. So it used to be called the bald-headed eagle, which meant white-headed eagle. Made a lot of sense. Now bald meaning something else doesn't make as much sense. But now what you will remember is that bald eagles do have bald legs. Bald eagles have bald legs, where golden eagles belong to a family of eagles called the booted eagle family, meaning the feathers go all the way down like boots, down. Once again, they're not feeding on fish, and they're feeding on mammals and squirrels and rabbits and turkeys that have sharp spurs or sharp claws that could hurt them in the process of trying to kill them. So by having extra feathers there, that helps protect them in that prey takedown. So the golden eagles have the not hairy legs, feathered legs. There you go. So there it again. There is the feathered legs right there. So side by side, there we've got the bald legs of the bald eagle, bald legs, and there are the feathered legs of the golden eagle. All right. So now it's time for a quiz. Okay. So I'm hoping all of you know that behind this question mark is an eagle. Based on the skills that I've given you so far, is it a bald eagle or a golden eagle? Yell your answer out. A little louder. Remember, I'm in Florida. All right, here's the reveal. I hope you all guessed bald eagle because of the bald legs. Bald eagles have bald legs. All right. Remember, though, as a good bird watcher, you always want to use more than one field mark. Okay, so what do we got here? We can't see the legs. But we do have some golden coloration here on the nape. The other thing that golden eagles have is right here. They also have this golden area right here. This little golden area right there where the wing bends is also distinctive of a golden eagle. So there's the full reveal. There's the feathered legs. There's the tricolored beak. There's the golden ape. There's a golden eagle. All right. Now your turn again. What do we got here? Can't see the legs, but we can see the little area right here at the bend of the wing. Are we seeing any gold? No. So we're probably looking at a juvenile bald eagle. Let's reveal. Yep. There's that big dark beak, Jimmy Durante beak, and it's all dark. All right. Now that's great when the birds are that close, right? But how often are you seeing these eagles that close? Most of the time it's something like this, right? You can all relate to that. That's typically how we're seeing the birds. Even at that distance, there are some things that we can focus in with our binoculars or taking a photo and then zooming in, we can look for later on to help us identify it. So here we have golden eagles. Here are the adults over here, okay? And then these are the younger birds. The younger birds are the ones that have the bold white patches in the outer part of the wing, and they also have the tails that are half black and half white. These feathers here are the tail feathers that were used in the tribes of the West. So the Native American tribes of the West had the regalia with the head feathers. Those feathers that were half white, half black came from those juvenile golden eagles. Now, that's what they look like. Here we are looking here. There's that adult golden eagle. And then here we have the juvenile golden eagles here. But look up here. Here are also some juvenile bald eagles. They also have white out there. But more importantly, I want you to notice they have white where the white meets the armpit. That's the axillaries. I call it the wing pits. It's easier to remember. They have white in the wing pits. Okay, so here we go. Here is a juvenile bald eagle because it has white in the wing pits. This then is a golden eagle, right? Juvenile golden eagle because the white is in the outer part of the wing. Here then is a guess. Very good. I hope you all got that. Is a juvenile bald eagle because it has the white in the wing pits. Okay, here is, ooh, a little more tricky this time, isn't it? Because the white does extend quite a bit down here. So remember, there's always going to be some variation, but the bulk of the white is in the outer part of the wing. And also notice there's a little bit of a golden nape and a tricolored beak there as well. So that is a juvenile golden eagle. This is an adult golden eagle. They lack the white patches in the outer wing, and they also lack the bold white and black tail as well. They're generally more brown overall. Here is a younger golden eagle that doesn't happen to have any white in the outer part of the wing, but it does have in the tail. So there again, always remember there are variations. That's why use more than one field mark. Look at that golden nape. And there's that gold that we talked about on the fold of the wing there. There you can see it right there in flight. All right, here is a juvenile golden eagle. Sometimes that white is on the upper surface of the wing. And here is a, heard you, juvenile bald eagle, white in the wing pits. Now, the bald eagle is definitely our nation symbol, and it's been our nation symbol for a long time. But some of you may have heard lately that the bald eagle has just officially been named the has been named the national bird. And I'll talk about it here in a little bit. But what I was sharing you real quickly is that as the nation's symbol for all these years, it's had a lot to represent. So as a lot to represent, it probably should wear some deodorant, right? And so as it's wearing deodorant, it's wearing it right here in the wing pits, okay? So remember, the bald eagles have the deodorant in the wing pits. Not quite like that. Yeah, I know, I said it. Sorry, you had to see that. But the golden eagles have the white in the outer part. It's not deodorant, it's fine cologne. Remember, they're also found in Europe, where they like to dab a little bit of cologne out on their wrist. So if you see a bird with a white patch in the outer part of the wrist, you're looking at a golden eagle. If it's in the armpit there, the wing pit, you're looking at a juvenile bald eagle. Now is a time for a test for you. And we're just about done here, folks, but I want a couple of more quizzes for you here. So the bird on the left, A, is a juvenile bald eagle, white there in the wing pit. And here we've got the outer wing area near the wrist. So we've got that European golden eagle on B. All right, that one. All right, was that a little too quick? Some of you didn't have your eyes open. I'll give you another look. Here it is, white in the outer part of the wing. Here is another quiz for you. Got lots of brown gold feathers here, right here. But are there any on the nape? No. Beak, is it tricolored? No, it's all dark, and it's a big Jimmy Durante beak. And the legs are bare. There's a bald eagle. Here's a golden eagle. I mentioned earlier that I see them going after turkeys, but I've also seen them going after white-tailed deer. Yep, never seen them be successful at killing white-tailed deer, but numerous times over the years, I see them trying to chase after deer. Here is a white in the wing pits, juvenile bald eagle, good job. Here is a, I'm hoping everybody gets this one right, our nation's bird, our national bird now, the bald eagle. And so the bald eagle has a lot of head in the front and a lot of tail sticking out the back, because being our national bird now, it should have a big head, right? So it has a lot of head sticking out in the front, a lot of tail sticking out behind. Now, speaking of the old national bird, you probably know this whole story about Benjamin Franklin, and really probably wasn't much truth to that. But here I am a little upset with Benjamin Franklin that, yes, they chose it as our nation's symbol, but not as a national bird. And so what were you thinking, Ben? Well, thankfully, here we have a gentleman. Let me go to that picture right here. This gentleman right here in the middle here, standing with Senator Klobuchar and one of our volunteers and board members, Al Cooper, and one of our ambassadors named Angel there. That gentleman is Preston Cook. Preston Cook was working on a book, and he has donated a huge collection of everything related to eagles to the National Eagle Center. It's well over 40,000 items. 40,000 items of everything related to eagles, from original John James Audubon paintings of eagles to Andy Warhol paintings to stamps and buttons and you name it, including this gargoyle eagle that was on the White House during all of FDR's inaugurations. Well, anyway, while he was working on this book, he was working to do a timeline, and he was trying to figure out when the bald eagle was chosen as our national bird to get the exact date and all that. And he couldn't find anything. So he eventually reached out to Dianne Feinstein in California, Senator Feinstein, and they started the process of looking through the records, and nothing was ever found. And so it was a miss. And so Preston worked on, through the National Eagle Center, a National Bird Initiative to get that to happen. And thankfully, the president, Joe Biden, signed that on Christmas Eve. And you can see here showing that. All right. So this is our quiz bird here for you. We have a bird here with the white in the outer wing. That is a golden eagle. Very good. I'm hoping by now you are all aware that that is a juvenile bald eagle on the top, and the golden eagle is the B on the bottom. Here, this is a painting in one of our murals in our second floor. This is a juvenile golden eagle. Also notice that smaller head profile. Remember I talked about the bald eagle having a big head because it's our nation's symbol and our national bird, so it should have a lot of head sticking out. Golden eagle has a much shorter head profile. So this one is that was a quick guess. You can see it has a lot of head sticking out, and it has a big beak. At this range, if you can see a beak, you're looking at a bald eagle. At this range, if you had to look to see if it had a beak, then it'd be a golden eagle. Remember, the golden eagles have the smaller schnoz. This one is a turkey vulture. Why do I have a turkey vulture in here? Well, turkey vultures hold their wings up in what we call a dihedral or a shallow V. Bald eagles, when they soar, they hold their wings flat like a board. Golden eagles, on the other hand, have a slight dihedral. As you can see here, here's that slight dihedral again. So anytime you're in southeast Minnesota in the wintertime and you see a bird with a dihedral, sometimes your mind goes to vulture, right? But you also want to maybe look closely, because remember, the vultures head out and the golden eagles come in, but they do have a slight dihedral. All right, couple last ones here. Here is a juvenile bald eagle. Very good. Notice that gold that we talked about. You can see right there. Anybody know this one? Looks like we have a big, dark beak, but we do have some golden feathers here, but they're not really on the nape. Oh, look, we also have bald legs. So this must be a bald eagle, right? Juvenile bald eagle. Well, in reality, this was a painting done by John James Audubon, And he called it, which he thought was a brand new species. And he thought he wanted to honor our first president. So he called this Washington sea eagle, or Washington's eagle, in honor of Washington. But in fact, what he was really painting was not a new species. It was just a juvenile bald eagle. So remember, everybody makes a mistake, even John James Audubon. With that, you need a treat. All right, we're going to jump ahead here. How about this one? Golden nape, right? Feathered, furred legs. But remember, use more than one field mark, so we got a bison. Golden eagle, juvenile golden eagle. Kind of looks like a little bit of short head profile, doesn't it? But the way the picture was taken makes it look like it, but it does have a big beak. So a juvenile bald eagle. All right, here we go. What about this one, guys? Got some gold feathers here, but it's not on the nape, is it? Big dark beak, but look at those bald legs. This is a juvenile bald eagle, and I'm hoping that you all got that right. What I wanted to point out is the person who put up this sign at Theodore Roosevelt National Park put this photograph underneath this caption, and it said, "Don't forget to look up. Golden eagles glide high on thermal air currents." So everybody makes mistakes, but I'm hoping that by now, at the end of the program, that all of you are much better at learning to identify those birds. And I'm going to skip ahead here. One more here for you. Looks like it has kind of a tricolored beak, doesn't it? But there's not much of a golden nape. Anybody know this bird? This is actually a juvenile bald eagle. It's kind of a trick question. In fact, it's our young eagle that we take care of at the Eagle Center, who's now 18. This is what he looked like when he was a youngster. Here he is today with that complete white head and tail. So young bald eagle, there's the adult. Remember, everybody makes mistakes. What's this, guys? Bald eagle, right? Well, not the person who put this on this bus. They called this golden eagle charter. Everybody makes mistakes, but not anybody in the St. Paul Audubon Alliance is not going to make a mistake after tonight, I hope. Thank you, folks, so much for sitting so politely tonight and listening to this. I really do appreciate that. I know you're probably getting a little tired. I went on and on. Probably a little snoozing going on out there. I understand that. That's okay. I'm used to that. But many of you have been wide-eyed. I liked some of the toothy grins. I'm sure you're giving some of my bad jokes. Maybe even a thumbs up. Thanks for bearing with me. I hope I wasn't a bore. I know many of you had other things to do. Yeah, I know it's getting rough. You're getting owly. Shut up. But I hope I've shared some knowledge with you. You've learned a little bit more about the golden eagles. I hope you'd like to come on down to National Eagle Center and visit us, learn about eagles more through our exhibits, take some of our field trips where we take you out in the wintertime. We've got a golden eagle trip coming up in February. We'll take you out just like this. We'll take you out in the habitat. We'll show you those golden eagles. We'll show you the bald eagles. We'll show you the differences, sometimes side by side. And it's a great opportunity to do that. But more importantly, we also have our survey coming up. We're always looking for citizen scientists. Last year, we had over 200 people help out with the survey. And we're always looking for more. We've got some training sessions coming up on Sunday and also on Tuesday. If you send an email to golden@nationaleaglecenter.org, once again, golden@nationaleaglecenter.org, send me an email, say you're interested in learning about our training sessions. Even if you don't participate, you can still attend the training session, learn even more than you did tonight. They're free. It's a great way to learn more about them. But hopefully at the end of that, you're like, yeah, I'm ready to go out and do a route. And we're expanding routes. I've got routes open up towards Mille Lacs because we're really learning these golden eagles are more places than just Southeast Minnesota. I mentioned the Camp Ripley folks a little bit earlier today. They've been doing some work near Camp Ripley, put some transfers on birds there. We know there are birds in more parts of Minnesota than we originally thought. And it's because of citizen scientists like you helping out with our project. So once again, I want to thank you so much for your time here tonight. And I do want to open up some questions. I know I went over a little bit, but if there's some questions, be glad to answer some of those for you. But thank you.
So Scott, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We have a lot of comments thanking you and applause. As much as you can do applause through chat, I guess. So people have done a really good job. There was one question or kind of comment from Tom about the chances of us seeing a golden eagle in the Minnesota River Valley or West Central Minnesota or up in the Alexandria area.
Yep.
I'm looking at those routes, those migratory routes, and they do seem to kind of travel,